Oh, what is the upskis, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the GXGamerCast. We're on episode 74 of my little gaming show where once a week I have to talk about video games. I love them so much. We're going to be talking about new games, old games from my past and childhood. I do reviews, top 10s, lists, and today we are starting off the new season with a versus. We're putting up Resident Evil 2 Remake versus Resident Evil 4 Remake. The battle of the remakes to see what is the best Resident Evil remake. My apologies, Resident Evil 3 Remake, but it's a little under the bar of 2 and 4 remakes. So those are the two that are going up against each other today. But before we get into the versus talk, let's talk about what I've been up to over the last week or so, and I always encourage you, the listener, the viewer, let me know what you've been up to over the last week. What new games, movies, TV shows are you diving into in the new year? Let me know. And let's kick it off. We kicked it off in style this new year with 3 movies this week, y'all. I felt bad because the week before I didn't watch any movies, so I compensated and watched 3 movies this week, and 3 damn fine movies, I must say. So we got Better Watch Out. Oh, buddy, was this movie really caught me off guard. I watched the trailer for this one. I was watching, it's the season now where everyone's putting out their best of lists. So I've been watching a lot of people's best movies of the year and stuff like that. So I really got into a movie kick this week, hence the 3 movies. But Better Watch Out was one on one of the lists that I watched, and it really caught my eye. I thought it looked like a good, funny comedy horror movie, and with a little kind of like a Home Alone twist on it. And I thought it'd be like a more twisted, messed up version of Home Alone, and it was definitely messed and twisted. That's for sure. Not the movie I expected, but in a really good way. Like, it really took me on a ride I wasn't expecting, but man, was I ever happy to get on this ride. A very, very interesting movie. Super dark and twisted. The young actors in this one, especially the best friend of the kid, really enjoyed his performance. He had like this really good range of acting, and of course the main boy in the movie, really pretty damn good performance from him right there. The only thing that was fairly annoying, he's like, I don't know, a teenager, and he's kind of got that squeaky, crackly voice that goes down when he like gets really emotional. So I mean, it's not ruining the movie or anything. It is a very, very weird, unique movie, super twisted and dark. I loved it. I was just like blown away by the end of it. My wife and I looked at each other. I'm like, that was not the movie I thought we were going to be watching. But we both really enjoyed this movie. Better watch out, man. Kind of a hidden gem right here. Don't miss out on that one. It was really, really enjoyable. I'd hit it with a 7.5 out of 10. Really good watch right there. And to kind of rinse off the traumaticness of that movie, my wife and I watched The Night Before, a comedy movie with Seth Rogen. I can't remember the name. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I think that's his name. Fuck. I actually watched this movie like years ago, and I remember liking it, but I could only remember the one part of the movie when Seth Rogen goes to church, and he's a Jewish man, and he goes, hallelujah! My wife and I quote that all the time, but we rewatched it, and oh my goodness, this movie is extremely funny. So much funnier than I remembered. We were laughing the whole entire time. Seth Rogen, like his girlfriend, the whole premise of the movie is that these 3 friends, they're kind of growing up now, getting into major adulthood, and their lives are formed, and they want to have one more big night out before Christmas, before everyone kind of separates and everything. So they go out, they have this big crazy night, and my favorite part is Seth Rogen is given like this box of drugs, whole bunch of drugs in it, and he's just doing them all throughout the night, and his reaction to all the drugs is just absolutely priceless. This movie was absolutely hilarious. One of the funnier movies I have seen in a minute. It's a bit older, but I find the older the comedy movie, generally the better it is nowadays. But this was really good. I was really into this one. A really good movie. I would highly recommend this one if you're looking for a laugh. and you like drugs, it's definitely one of those raunchy comedies, right? It's a Seth Rogen movie, so if you if you don't like that stuff, then don't watch it. But my wife and I really enjoyed this one. And my final movie that I watched, this one I watched solo because I didn't think my wife would like this one very much. But this one is on Prime, and it's called Sisu, Sisu. Very cool movie. So what immediately drew me to it is it's a war movie, but it's only an hour and a half. I was like, is that even possible? Has there ever been a movie related in and around the war that was that short? So I was immediately interested. Reviews were good. Read the premise. It's this old guy. He's a a miner, and he finds a whole bunch of gold. And during the World War II era, and he's just trying to get to a bank to fucking deposit the gold, and he runs into a bunch of Nazis, and fucking chaos ensues. This movie, lots of gore to it. It is super cool. This old guy, he's just trying to get his shit to the bank, and these Nazis start messing with him, and he makes them pay. Very, very gory movie. I was giggling at the gore, very over the top. Just to kind of highlight what kind of gore you might be getting into here, there's a scene where he is in a minefield with a whole bunch of landmines all over the place, and the Nazis are just watching, and there's like a whole bunch of smoke, and out comes a mine through the smoke. It hits one of the Nazis right in the face, and he fucking explodes into a bloody mess. So if that's the kind of thing you're into, Sisu was highly enjoyable, super entertaining, over the top kind of action gore. Really cool character, this old mining prospect guy. Like, wow, he was fucking badass, I would say. Yeah, man, that movie was super cool as well. What did I score this one right here? Let me just check. Yeah, I really enjoyed Sisu. I gave that an 8 out of 10, so out of the 3 movies, if you can only pick one for my recommendation, I guess Sisu. The Night Before is a really easy comedy movie to watch, and Better Watch Out is just something really unique, very weird, twisted story. So, yeah, if you had to pick one of them, you really can't go wrong with either 3. I think it's 3 very different flavors of movie for myself this week, so that was very enjoyable. In terms of TV shows, still kind of putting away at The Witcher. I tried to cancel it with my wife, but she likes it, so we're watching it. I'm in and out, man. Like, I don't know. The story's all over the place for me. I'm having a hard time paying attention to it. It's just really not drawing me in that much. There's certain parts to it that I'm like, ooh, that's really cool, but this show it's a long show. They're like hour-long episodes, and maybe 10 minutes of the hour-long episode I'm like engaged with. So yeah, not a show for me, but my wife is liking it, so I'm watching it for her. And I've been watching a few episodes of Community here and there, so that's really key. And I haven't done a lot of TV shows, right? I'm definitely on a movie kick right now, so yeah, gonna be watching some movies. Hoping to watch John Wick Chapter 4 tonight, so I'm looking forward to that one. In terms of video games, I've been on an absolute Resident Evil kick, hence the verses, but man, I finished Resident Evil 4, finished that campaign off, absolutely loved it, immediately purchased the Separate Ways DLC, and now I am playing through that, loving that as well. Oh my goodness, you gotta play Resident Evil 4 Remake. It is amazing, so much fun. I had such a tough time putting this game down. I just wanted to keep playing it, which led me into playing and finishing Resident Evil 2 Remake. Finally, fully finished that game. I finished off both parts of the campaign, and man, it was, again, a ton of fun. That's why this is going to be a really fun versus for me. I just had a ton of fun playing both of these games, and yeah, that was a ton of fun. Still playing through some of Dave the Diver, playing a little bit of that on the side every here and there, putting a few hours this week, still really enjoying it, hella charming, and they're still giving me new game mechanics as I'm going on in the game. They're still doing a really good job at, balancing how many new things that they're throwing at me. And again, with Dave the Diver, I wasn't expecting this much out of the game, but it's really awesome. I'm really enjoying Dave the Diver so far. And I started up a new game just this morning. Only got in like an hour and a half of it, but I started up Star Wars Jedi Survivor. So this is the one that's kind of been tugging at me quite a bit for the last month or so, and I got in there, and so far so good. Very rusty with the controls, rather different from the other games that I've been playing recently. So wouldn't say struggling with the controls, but I've got to get into the controls a little bit. They're a little weird, but once you get in there, it's a gorgeous video game. I got to say that right off the bat. I mean, already had like 2 or 3 moments where I just have to stop and look around. I'm like, my goodness, the world that they've built here in this huge area that you're in at the beginning of the game just looks fucking sensational. And yeah, so far they've thrown quite a bit at me. They've thrown some platforming and climbing, the combat. I really enjoy the combat. I want to get some more of that combat. I like that. And yeah, so far so good with Star Wars. And yeah, so that is everything that I've been up to over the last week, everybody. So it is time. Let's do the first versus of the year. Resident Evil 2 Remake versus Resident Evil 4 Remake. Okay, everybody, versus rules for this one. We have 5 categories we're going to be going through: graphics and atmosphere, sound design, gameplay, replayability, and the best scares. So 5 categories. Winner of the best of 5 wins the versus. So we're going to dive into this, and let's just get into it. Let's start off with the graphics and atmosphere. We'll kick it off with Resident Evil 2. So both of these games are utilizing the same graphics engine, the RE engine, so they both are on the same playing field. I played both of these games on the PS5, upgraded, whatever the fuck, so they were on the same playing field with that. But both of these games are absolutely sensational looking. I mean, I've said this a few times before, but I feel like more than any genre right now in this current generation of games, it's horror that is really, really benefiting from this generation of graphical fidelity and upgrades with the lighting and the reflections. Like, these are the kind of things that horror really likes to use. Just little shadows, little glimpses of this or that, and especially lighting. So lighting is absolutely a star in the Resident Evil remakes. It looks amazing. The shadows are insane. It's a beautiful looking game. Right away, you're going to be rather impressed with the way that these games look. They're both incredible looking. The zombies, the creatures, whatever the hell, they're terrifying. They have awesome designs. Resident Evil 4 definitely has more variety in terms of the types of enemies you're going to be fighting and seeing, so there is definitely more visual variety in terms of that kind of thing. But with Resident Evil 2, you're generally sticking around to your big police station area, but it's not your typical police station. I have never seen a police station quite as massive as the one in Resident Evil 2. It's numerous floors. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous police station. It's almost like a museum. It's huge marble pillars, and of course these crazy, very iconic statue in the center of that police station. But you know, it's got good variety to it in the police station. You got the big open area in the middle, and then on the outside you got the offices that are fucking dark and terrifying, building into that very terrifying atmosphere that is the police station in Resident Evil 2. And it only gets worse the lower down you get. Once you get down into the parking garage, oh my god, I dread so much every time I have to go down into the parking garage of Resident Evil 2. I know what's down there, and it's not pleasant. It's dark, it's scary, and there's lights that are flashing that make shadows that are scary. So atmosphere is absolutely just insane in Resident Evil 2. I am always so scared when of just being there. I'm immediately like, oh god. You could just feel the dread. You know it's scary. It doesn't shy away from that. Everything is scary about Resident Evil 2. And you do get to go outside and travel around in Resident Evil 2. I can't recall there being any daylight sequences in Resident Evil 2. That was a newer thing in the games for later Resident Evil games. But you do get to go outside. The weather effects in this game are pretty good, especially the rain falling down on the characters, making everything nice and wet, and you get that reflection. It's small, like that's the only kind of problem with graphics now, is that the details are excellent. It's just a lot of small details, so you're seeing like the reflections in the water and the puddles and stuff like that, something that you're not necessarily noticing when you're fucking running away from terrifying zombies, but it's there, baby. It's freaking there, and it is gorgeous. With Resident Evil 4, you're getting more variety of locations. You're definitely traveling around a lot more at Resident Evil 4. You're going from, like the villages to a castle to a laboratory to... what the hell else is there? Like a fucking, almost like a labyrinth castle kind of deal. Resident Evil 2 also goes to a laboratory. It goes to... like the dirty basement, like the sewers and stuff like that. There are locations to go to. You're not just in the police station the whole entire time. You do go to other locations. You even visit an adoption kind of, whatever the fuck an adoption building, wherever you locate children or whatever the fuck it's called. I don't know, but Resident Evil 4 by far definitely has more places you're visiting and more locations, different variety. But it also looks very similar in terms of the graphics. Like I said, uses the same engine. Resident Evil 4 is a newer game. I feel like it's maybe a little bit more crisp with the environments, a little bit more detailed, a little bit more going on in the backgrounds. But that may also be the environment that they're in. There's more outdoorsy areas where you can have a lot more stuff going on in the background. I found the weather effects to be pretty damn impressive in Resident Evil 4. There's a particular section in the game where the wind is just going crazy. The rain, it's just pouring down on you, and you can almost feel it. Like you're like, wow, this is a very intense storm. So that was fairly impressive for me. That section in particular, we'll talk about it in sound design, I guess, in a little bit. That didn't necessarily tickle my pickle. But the weather effects are on point, the environments look really detailed and scary and gory, and they got a pretty good amount of color. Like, it's not just your browns and grays, it's got some color to the game as well. And of course, the creatures. Like I said a little bit earlier, there's a good variety of creatures in this game as well, and they have those very intense, pretty wild transformations, especially some of the bosses. They just... fucking things flying out of their bodies and appendages flying all over the place and goop and that whatever that liquid is that comes out of them. It's disgusting, but in a beautiful way. Both of these games are disgusting, absolutely disgusting, with the blood all over the place, the visceral, the gore. It's there, man. It's on par. Both of these games look absolutely excellent, but since we're doing a versus, we gotta pick one here, so I would give the slight edge to Resident Evil 4. Also, I will note, there are some night and day sequences in Resident Evil 4. Not like sunny daytime, oh, what a blue, beautiful sky, it's like gray, but you can tell it's like an overcast part of the day, and that just brings like a different kind of flavor to the look of the game. It's kind of a natural daylight, and things look a little bit differently instead of like being lit by a flame or a flashlight. Oh, and those sections in both of the games when it's really dark and you gotta pull out the flashlight, oh my goodness, does it ever look good, man. Like, playing this game, you have to play it like in the dark with no lights on, get your headphones on, and oh man, the lighting in those sections is just so freaking excellent. But yeah, I will give the slight edge to Resident Evil 4, just a little bit more variety in there. I felt like with the little bit of extra years on it, I think they were able to clean up and maybe give a little bit more detail into the environments and the character models. I guess I could touch on that too. The characters look good. They're not like the most realistic character models that I have seen in video games. I think even Star Wars that I'm playing today, I think that they're a step ahead of what Capcom has been doing with the Resident Evil games. They still kind of have that video gamey look, because, well, maybe it's because I don't know if they have like real actors for the facial capture. I'm not sure if that's what they're doing with it, but it kind of still looks like a video game. I'm not like, oh, that looks very close to a real human being, but yeah, so that's kind of what's going on with the Resident Evil. I don't know. They haven't really gotten to that realistic art style with the remakes, not so much with the Resident Evil 7 and 8. Those ones a little bit more realistic, especially 7. 7 really, that game scared the shit out of me. So, yes, slight edge to Resident Evil 4 for graphics and atmosphere. Up next, we have sound design. This is very, very important when it comes to horror video games. Sound is, I don't know how big of a percentage it is in terms of horror, but it's a big chunk of the pie right there. I mean, if you don't have terrifying sounds and good sound design, you're not going to build proper tension, and you're just not going to get the scares that you're looking for. So we'll start with Resident Evil 4. Buddy, the soundtrack in this game is excellent, super eerie, unsettling when you're in those moments when you're fucking down in a dark basement and all you got is your flashlight. It's just, the music is slow and brooding and building, and you're just like, oh my god, I'm so tense right now. So absolutely hits the nail on the head with that tension, eerie soundtrack. And then when shit gets crazy, man, when you're in a big boss fight, if you're in a running sequence where you just got to get the hell out of there, the music, it can get pretty damn epic. Let's have a little listen to some of the Resident Evil 4 music. Yeah, I would say that hits the mark for your epic, crazy boss music right there for sure. And the voice acting in this game. So the original Resident Evil 4, Ashley was a big complaint with a lot of people that played that game. I mean, myself included. I wasn't a fan of Ashley in the original Resident Evil 4. She was whiny, very annoying. And she's a lot better in this game. I wouldn't say she ever really bothered me. With her voice, I thought she sounded fine. She was definitely toned down from the Resident Evil 4, the original Ashley. She's more bearable nowadays, which is great. Overall, I don't think the Resident Evil games, even the newer ones, the remakes, I still don't think the voice acting is like top tier, like elite level voice acting. I still think it's definitely a massive improvement over where they first started with Resident Evil, where they're gonna make Jill a zombie sandwich or whatever. But it's good. It's not bad. It's not cringy. It's good. It's solid. But I still think it has room for improvement with the voice acting overall. Leon's good. I think a lot of the side characters were good. Ada, she was good as well. One thing that I definitely found a little bit annoying with Resident Evil 4 Remake is the amount of grunting and heavy breathing that is going on with Leon, and mostly just Leon. I've been playing the Separate Ways DLC where you're playing as Ada Wong. She definitely doesn't breathe like a freaking mutant like Leon does. Leon, you can run for one step and he's just, oh my goodness. It's like Homer Simpson over here. The guy is just insanely out of shape apparently. And when that weather, the like weather storm, the big fucking rainstorm kicks in on Resident Evil 4, that section, it's even worse. Now he's like dealing with the wind and he's just, it's way too much. It is, I was a little bit like, are we serious with this a little bit? And yeah, it didn't ruin the game or anything, but it was something that I noticed. I brought up to a couple of people that played it, and they're also like, that's definitely something. So I don't know what that's about. Leon, you gotta hit the gym, maybe stop just standing around looking super cool, maybe run and look super cool. I don't know, but you gotta work on your cardio, dog. Like, that's embarrassing. So that was a little bit annoying throughout the game. particularly during like the weather phase where it's like they just double down on the grunting and the breathing. But yeah, that would be my only real complaint with the voice or the sound design in Resident Evil 4. Other than that, I mean, the creatures sound excellent. They sound great. They sound scary. The fucking blood, like when you shoot a friggin' zombie in the head and its head explodes, it is so satisfying. Just the squishes, the bones cracking, the gore sounds, just, yes, absolutely fucking nailed it. I think the weapons also sound really good, especially in Resident Evil 4. Like, zombies will throw shit at you. They'll throw a fucking axe hatchet right at your head, and if you shoot it midair, it goes patink, and it's just, oh, it's so satisfying, dog. And there's even some really small things, like, there was a zombie that was in between a metal fence, and I shot the fence and I actually shot like the metal part of the fence and went bing. So it was like, I was like, goddamn, like, yeah, they got the sound. Like, the sound has always been incredible with Resident Evil games, but I think more so than ever with these remake games, the sound is amazing in Resident Evil 4. I gotta shout out the merchant, my merchant, the homie, the best merchant in all of video games, Resident Evil 4. And yo, I did my due diligence, and I asked like 3 different people that played this game before I did, is the merchant in this game, and is he awesome? Does he say, what are you buying? And they all said no, that is false. The merchant absolutely says, what are you buying? And he says a whole bunch of other shit. So the merchant is awesome. I love that guy. It may not be the original voice actor or whatever, but he sounds really close. He's charming. He says some one-liners that are semi-funny, and I love that guy. So the merchant is awesome in Resident Evil 4. I don't know what those other people were smoking, but yeah, he absolutely is awesome. They did a really good job with the merchant and the creature sounds, especially with the transformations and stuff, like I mentioned before, when like a fucking 8-foot appendage just like explodes out of their back. It's just like all these, oh yeah. And the explosions sound great. Like, oh, all the sound effects are absolutely excellent in Resident Evil 4. And with Resident Evil 2, pretty much the same deal. I would say the soundtrack, I might actually like the soundtrack in Resident Evil 2 just a little bit more. Let's have a listen. Let's have a little listen here. Yeah, no, that is pretty darn good right there in that of itself. So I really enjoy the music in both these games. I think I do actually enjoy Resident Evil 2 music a little bit more. Even on the startup screen, like when you're on the PlayStation, you just hover over the picture. The music for the Resident Evil 2 one just always like chills me to the bone, just like boom. You're like, oh boy. And that Mr. X music, when he freaking gets eyes on you and he starts coming after you, that like boo, that little drop of that, whatever that sound is, it's just chilling and haunting. Oh, and of course, like if you're mentioning Mr. X, and the most iconic sound that motherfucker produces is those huge footsteps that just haunt you throughout the playthrough of that game, when you know that guy is hunting you, and you know he's close when you hear those footsteps. And oh my goodness, man, especially, again, you have to play these games with headphones. Like, you are not playing it properly if you don't have the headphones on. I don't care if it scares you, it's supposed to, that means it's doing its job right. But damn, dude, like when you can tell, like, oh shit, he's coming down the hallway to the left, or he's on the floor above me, like right above me, he's right on top of my head. And damn, dude, like, it is so crazy. Like, oh god, just hearing those footsteps is so haunting. And it's almost haunting when you don't hear them, because you're like, now I don't know where he is. Like, hopefully he's really far away, or he could just blast out of a wall out of freaking nowhere. I don't know. But the sound of Mr. X's footsteps are absolutely chilling. And the lickers, man, oh my goodness, the lickers in Resident Evil 2. I don't think there's any in Resident Evil 4. Thankfully, there's other horrifying creatures, but the lickers in Resident Evil 2 are the bane of my existence. Those things absolutely horrify me. Their shrieks, their little clicky clacks of their long nails against the walls and the floors and stuff. Oh, they're absolutely haunting. I hate those fucking things. Ew, the lickers. Yeah, the monsters sound terrifying. The freaking, like, when you're walking down a hallway in Resident Evil 2, when the zombies just smash on the window and they go, bleh, scares the fucking shit out of you, man. Like, they nailed the sound effects in Resident Evil 2. Everything will scare you in Resident Evil 2. A fucking branch touching a window, creaks on the floorboards, doors opening, breathing. Anything will scare you in Resident Evil 2 because the sound is just, it is absolutely haunting. The voice acting in Resident Evil 2, again, probably on the same level as 4. I feel like there's less talking in Resident Evil 2, but I didn't find anybody to have a bad performance, and no one really stood out over the top, making me go, oh, wow, I just want to hear you speak. So, yeah, I mean, the voice acting is serviceable in Resident Evil 2 as well. Everything sounds fucking excellent in these games, but I am giving sound design to Resident Evil 2. It's just more haunting. I think the music is on par. Resident Evil 4 may have a little bit more of a action, kind of a faster paced soundtrack. Resident Evil 2, a little bit more brooding. It's not that either of those games don't have it. Resident Evil 2 has the epic, over-the-top soundtracks, and Resident Evil 4 has the haunting, brewing soundtracks. I just think Resident Evil 2, I just like it a little bit more, and it definitely, I just think the sounds in Resident Evil 2 are just scarier than Resident Evil 4. I will shout out the regenerator in Resident Evil 4. It sounds creepy. It's definitely a creepy sounding creature. It's just not as creepy as it was in Resident Evil 4. We'll talk about that in the final category, but category 2, sound design, goes to Resident Evil 2. We are now tied 1-1, and we'll head now into gameplay. Obviously, how do these games play? Well, they're survival horror games at heart, right? So that's essentially what we're talking about here. So we'll start with Resident Evil 2, which has a much more survival horror focused style of gameplay. Like in Resident Evil 2, I had times where I had absolutely zero ammo, zero negative ammo. I had nothing, absolutely nothing. No melee, no grenades, no nothing. All I could do is run and try to avoid some of the monsters at times. So yeah, the survival aspect in Resident Evil 2 is a little bit more hardcore. And you're just not going to be fighting anywhere near as much zombies as you are in Resident Evil 4. Like, every zombie encounter in Resident Evil 2 is kind of like a big deal. It's almost like a strategy of like, should I attack it now? Should I get it later? How should I attack it? Should I try and take it down to a knee and use some melee attacks? So you have to think about things at times with Resident Evil 2, with how you're using your ammo especially, and if you're newer at the Resident Evil games, that's probably going to be even more of a problem if you're struggling getting your shots on target, which I was definitely having some problems with the first time I played through it, so I was struggling more than normal, I would imagine, with the ammunition. But even in my most recent playthrough, I had a whole entire section which was filled. I went through almost the entire sewer section without a fucking single bullet. It was insane, and there are some pretty damn big enemies that you have to deal with down there, and the best I could do was run away. So yeah, I felt the survival part was very prevalent in Resident Evil 2, but it's not without its action as well. It has boss fights. I found that the boss fights were mostly good, but there's definitely one or two that definitely didn't tickle my pickle the way that I would like it to, especially the boss fight where you're fighting a tyrant on this platform, and you gotta hit the button and make this giant fucking crate hit it, and I found that boss fight to be extremely annoying at times. And the last time I actually did that fight, I just got lucky. Like, every time you hit the button and you send the crate over to come hit him, he'll do this, like, grab attack. He'll just fucking charge at you. He rarely misses it. Like, he's probably going to grab you 9 times out of 10, and he'll grab you and hold on to you, and you both get smacked with the crate, and you got to start the fight over again. Every time I had to do that fight, it took me like 7+ times, and I would generally just get lucky that he just happened to miss me with his grab. I couldn't figure that fight out, how to do it properly, I guess, but that fight was fairly annoying. Other than that, I mean, I felt like most of the boss fights were friggin' awesome, especially the later boss fights. The fight against Mr. X is awesome. I really enjoyed that one. The shooting in this game is good. Some people do and don't like the shooting in Resident Evil games. This is the third person over the shoulder Resident Evil, not like the Resident Evil 7 or 8 where it's first person. These are your old school well, not old school, but you know what I mean. Third person over the shoulder style. The shooting, I like it. I'm very used to it now, but I will admit that when I first played a Resident Evil of this style, Resident Evil 4 back on PS2, I hated the shooting. Absolutely hated it. Found it very finicky and hard, but I think that's out of design. They want it to feel a little bit difficult. You have to really place your shot. You gotta be smart about it. And the zombies are pretty smart too. They don't just fucking stand there and let you shoot them in the face. They move, they fucking dodge, they're all over the place. So I enjoyed the shooting in these games. I really like it now, but I would understand if people were like, I don't like the shooting in Resident Evil games. I can understand why. I think the level design in Resident Evil 2 is really good. There is a lot more backtracking in Resident Evil 2 than there is in Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 has backtracking, but it's more of your own design if you want to go back and get a treasure or something. With Resident Evil 2, it's really in the level design. Sometimes you have to. That's just what you got to do. You got to go back over here and put this into something and bring it back over here. You'll be revisiting areas more so in Resident Evil 2 than 4, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think in Resident Evil 2, I think they did a really good job. Hence why I think the level design is great. I like the way where it's like, okay, I hit this obstacle. Maybe I found a little piece over here that'll help me with an obstacle back over there, which then unlocks me getting through the obstacle back over that way, and so on and so forth. It's a really, it's well done. You're like, oh, okay, now I have this piece. I don't find myself getting lost very often. I even went 2 or 3 weeks without playing it, and I came back and I was able to figure out where I was and what needed to be done. So I think they do a pretty damn good job at making it pretty damn reasonable to figure it out. It may look a little intimidating at first, and you got all these rooms and floors to check out, but they label everything. You can buy treasure maps and shit like that, so I have no problem with the level design. It can definitely look intimidating, but I think once you get going in there, you get a little used to the layout. It's great. Even when I got to the end of my first playthrough and then started up the second half, I felt very at home, very comfortable. I felt the flow of the police station was really nice and fairly easy to get around in, I thought. Once you get used to it, of course. There's some good puzzles, I felt, in Resident Evil 2. They're not, crazy, thought-provoking, Cocoon level, Portal 2 level style of puzzles, but they're fine. They do the trick. They're okay. Now, I haven't played the original Resident Evil 2. That's kind of my only downside of this versus, that I won't be able to tell the big differences from the old one to the new one, but I feel like they more than likely improved on some of the puzzles from the original Resident Evil 2, but I felt the puzzles were fine. You get safes and locks to find throughout the game. It's kind of the little secrets. You'll find these safes and you can go around. You might find a note in a room on the other floor somewhere and it'll have the combination on it. You might find a picture, and on the back of the picture it might have some numbers, and then you can put it in to some of the locks and codes you'll find throughout the game. They're pretty fun to track down and find. And they have, I think, the superior 180 quick turn in Resident Evil 2. It's a one-button situation. You press circle and bam, you 180 turn. You can fucking, if you need to run quickly, no problem. One button, you're out and you're good to go. Good to go. And I feel like you got to have an awesome finale when it comes to Resident Evil games, and I think Resident Evil 2's finale is excellent. Absolutely excellent. Big, fucking over-the-top, self-destruction, freaking explosion sequence and stuff like that. Classic. Super classic stuff. Loving the gameplay in Resident Evil 2. And then there's Resident Evil 4. So this one takes a lot more of the action, horror, survival path. There's more action. There's definitely a lot more killing in Resident Evil 4. I think the first sequence alone, you probably have killed more zombies than the entirety of Resident Evil 2. So it's a bit of a different flavor. Every zombie fight in Resident Evil 2, like I said, it's kind of a strategy situation. In Resident Evil 4, not so much. It's kind of, they give you lots of firepower, and you can use it, man. Like, you fucking blasting away zombies with explosives and shotguns and a variety of different weapons. You can upgrade all these weapons, which is really fun. I love upgrading the weapons. Can't do that in Resident Evil 2. You can maybe get an attachment or two for the weapons, but you're not increasing their power, you're not increasing their fire rate and their reload capacity and stuff like that like you are in Resident Evil 2, and it's really fun. You get a pretty damn good variety of weapons. Leon's got his set, Ada's got her set of weapons. I'm going to try my best to keep DLC out of the conversation here. I just want them to be base game conversation, but I will just mention that Ada has her own weapons, but Leon has a huge arsenal of weapons, unlockable weapons, secret weapons, all that stuff, all upgradable. You got what you call extra attachments for the weapons, sights, laser sights, things that can help with accuracy, so on and so forth. So yeah, a lot more action-packed is Resident Evil. It mostly comes down to preference. Like, if you prefer your Resident Evil more survival, then Resident Evil 2. If you prefer your Resident Evil a little bit more action-packed, then Resident Evil 4 would be for you. You also get a little bit more side stuff to do. So you got the Merchant. He offers up a shooting gallery. There's like, I think 4 different areas you can do the shooting gallery. They're pretty simple. Different challenges with a bunch of weapons. Shoot the targets, get a whole bunch of points, and you can unlock coins to get yourself a little charm. I think that's what they're called, to put on your briefcase, just for little bonuses. Like, you get a 15% increase in getting green herbs and stuff like that. It's just a nice little side distraction that you get every once in a while. Like, every 4 hours, you'll pop into the Merchant, and you'll see that there's a shooting gallery. Like, oh snap, I'll go in there, have a little bit of fun. And there's also like side quests, which are really fun. So if you remember from the original Resident Evil 4, you would have those like blue gems or blue medallions you had to shoot. They've kind of turned that into a whole like side assignment section in the new Resident Evil 4 remake, where you get to shoot the blue medallions. You get to, sometimes you're off on like a bounty hunt. He's like, oh, there's this really fucking mean zombie down in this area. Can you go take it out? You go down there, kill the zombie, and then you come back and you get these spindles, and you can trade those in for rewards, like a new attaché case, which gives you new bonuses. You can unlock jewels and treasures, keys. Like, yeah, man, it's a lot of fun, and they were super rewarding and pretty easy to go back and do. Like, that's where you're going to get some of the sidetracking. It's like, oh, okay, can you go back to this area and kill like 7 rats in this area or something? And they're not like, you look at the map, you're like, oh, it's just a little bit over here. Yeah, I'll go over there and do it. It's well worth your time. Very good rewards that you're getting for doing those side contracts, and I really got a kick out of doing them. I thought they were all really fun. You get great boss fights. I thought the boss fights in Resident Evil 4 were all great. I didn't think one of them was bad. I really enjoyed all the boss fights in Resident Evil 4. Great level design as well. It's less of a puzzle, like within itself. You're just kind of going from area to area. They have their puzzles. Some are not so good. There was a particular puzzle in Resident Evil 4 that absolutely drove me. The orb puzzle. Oh my god, you have to like line up these like 3 fucking things in an orb. It's a little bit different. Like, I remembered it from Resident Evil 4. I remember it being like, whatever. And the new one, it was just, I was like, what the fuck? Am I stupid or something? Why can't I figure this out? Took me an embarrassing amount of time to figure out that orb puzzle. And it's not that it was hard. It was more or less tedious, honestly. It was, not the best. But the puzzles, again, they're not why you're playing Resident Evil games, I hope. But, the puzzles are there. They're not offensive, but they're not fucking highlights or anything. You do get a little bit of exploration, not like an annoying amount where it seems really forced and just kind of slammed in there because that's what all the other games are doing. But there's an area in Resident Evil 4 where it gives you a pretty good amount of freedom to explore. You're given a boat and you can just kind of go to these other areas if you want to. I enjoyed that. But that was kind of the one only big open area to kind of check out if you wanted to, which was nice. I thought it was pretty good. And, of course, the finale is epic. I mean, oh my goodness. I remember it from very vividly from the original with the Sea-Doo, the big ol' escape out of the island. And I thought they did a even better job, obviously, with the remake. It's even crazier, it's bigger, it's badder, it's more epic, and I love the finale. So with that being said, with gameplay, like I said, it does kind of come down to preference. But for me, I found the gameplay of Resident Evil 4 to be a lot of fun. I said this a few weeks ago. For like every 2 hours of Resident Evil 4 I would play, I would maybe get like 45 minutes of gameplay for Resident Evil 2, because Resident Evil 4 was just more fun to play. It's less stressful in terms of just all around tension. So like you're going into big fights and you feel good about it. You're like, oh, I got a loaded up shotgun, I got a bunch of this and a bunch of that. They're not shy about giving you ammo. There's crates all over the place. Almost every enemy drops something, money or resources, something like that. There's a pretty good crafting mechanic in both the games. In Resident Evil 2, you can craft up your herbs and ammo and stuff like that. Same in Resident Evil 4, you can craft the same thing, ammo, stuff like that. Pretty good. But for me, I'm picking Resident Evil 4. I just felt that it was more fun to play, more action to it. The killing of the zombies is just a lot of fun. You get more ammo to have. You can use your fun guns more often. And yeah, I just think moment-to-moment gameplay is more fun in Resident Evil 2. But the gameplay in Resident Evil 2, of course, is also excellent. But I'm giving the edge to Resident Evil 4. So we are up to 2-1 now for Resident Evil 4 as we move into our next category, replayability. So how often are you going to replay these games? I think it's actually a really good strong suit for both of these games. These games are very replayable. We'll start with Resident Evil 4. So with Resident Evil 4, you're getting one campaign, Leon's campaign. There is DLC, but we're not counting that. Do the campaign, you unlock New Game Plus, where you continue with all your upgraded weapons, all the stuff that you've purchased. You can continue on with that, continue upgrading the weapons, continue finding more treasures and all that great stuff. You'll get new upgradable weapons, you'll get new outfits. There's little collectibles, tons of little collectibles, the little models of all the characters and pictures and all that shit. And I just checked. I turned on Resident Evil 4, and I didn't see anything extra in terms of gameplay modes. There's not like a mercenaries or a survival mode. I feel like those were modes that were in some of the older Resident Evil 4s that were released, but I just checked and I didn't see anything on the main disc of the game, so I didn't see any extra content. I don't know if they're planning on releasing some more, but There's no extra game modes outside of the main story and the DLC, so that's interesting to me. Now, in terms of the Resident Evil 2 remake side, we got In a way, there are 4 different campaigns. They're shorter campaigns to play, but 4 different styles. So each campaign, roughly 6 to 8 hours. So the way that you can do it, so you have Claire and Leon. So they have 2 stories, and you can do it Claire first and Leon second. That's one way to play it. Or you can do Leon first and Claire second. All 4 of those ways. There's 4 different ways you can play the game, and you'll get slightly different outcomes with the game, but you will deal with some sections of it that are the same, but there are some pretty hefty differences that I noticed. I just did the one that I did Claire first and Leon second, and there were some different boss fights in there, different scenes. Leon, you're more focused with Ada and Leon's story, and then with Claire, you're with Sherry, and you're kind of dealing with that story right there. You'll have little meetups in between with Claire and Leon, and you'll get some other areas of Claire's campaign that you couldn't get to in Leon. So you're like, oh, I wasn't in this room in Leon's side, and yeah, some pretty sporadic things happen at different times. So it definitely keeps you on your toes. When I started up the second half, Leon's part, a certain somebody came to visit me a lot earlier than I was expecting, and I was like, holy shit, okay, that's super different. So yeah, it's got a lot going for it right there. I don't know if I've technically done 3 of the 4 campaigns. I would have to go back to my PS4 save and finish off Claire part B. I think that's how it is. It's like Leon A, Claire B, and then Claire A, Leon B, something like that. I don't know. It's not that confusing. Like once I saw it, I was like, oh, okay, I understand completely. That's really simple, but it gives you a ton of extra replayability. Like that's essentially what I did. I played Resident Evil 2 Remake like 3-4 years ago or something like that, and then I came back to it years later, played it the different way, and got it felt like a completely different experience for me. So that is huge for Resident Evil 2, and they're not done there. So you get the New Game Plus, of course. You get new difficulty unlocks when you beat the game. You can do professional mode, which good fucking luck with that. You get a crazy amount of collectibles to unlock and obtain, and then you get extra survivor modes. There are 3 bonus scenarios. Like, you'll meet some other side characters along the way, and you can actually play out their little scenarios, which is awesome. I didn't get to finish them, but I started up one of the scenarios with the dad and the daughter in the gun shop, and I was like, whoa, this is fucking awesome. Like, these little extra scenarios, I was fucking blown away that they had that in there as well. So with that being said, I think easily replayability, Resident Evil 2 takes this one for sure. You get 4 pretty what's the word I want, more concentrated, easier to take down campaigns, because the Resident Evil 4 campaign, it took me about 17 hours, but I will say that it absolutely flew by. I didn't feel like at any point that it was dragging on. I was like, oh, another section, like, oh, we're still going on here. I wanted more. When I got to the end of Resident Evil 4, I immediately wanted to start up another playthrough, but instead I purchased the DLC, so I just wanted more. It left me wanting more, and that is great. So, I mean, it's a longer campaign, but with the 2 Resident Evil campaigns combined together, you're roughly getting the same amount of campaign, roughly 15 to 17 hours to get through them. And yeah, but Resident Evil 2, man, offers just that much more content. I think it's obviously more varied in the campaign. So yeah, easily Resident Evil 2 Remake takes it, and we are all tied up at 4, like it's designed or something that way. Who did that? Anyway, we go into the final round, best scares. Oh, buddy. Let's start with Resident Evil 2. So, without a doubt, I think the Lickers may be the most terrifying enemy for me now. If I redid my top 10 or top 13 scariest enemies list, the Lickers may now be at the top of that list, because those things absolutely petrify me. At least, I would say 3 solid times. The liquors gave me the scare of my life, where I was so scared that my body basically shut down for a second. I may have died, I don't know, but my body just couldn't react. I was so scared. I would, and it was really the same situation every time. I'm rather running away from another liquor, running away from Mr. X, or running away from a zombie, and I bust into a room, and bam, there's a fucking liquor in there, and it goes, Rah! And my body shuts down, dude. I get so scared. I'm like, oh, god damn it. It happened a solid 3 times. 11 out of 10 scare. Fucking liquors, man. They're absolutely horrifying in Resident Evil 2. And I don't know if they added in more of these motherfuckers in like the PS5 update, but I do not recall when I played this game on PS4, I swore there was like 2 liquors. Total! 2 liquors total. Motherfucker, there was like 3 liquors in one room. I don't know what happened, but I just feel like they amped up the liquorage in Resident Evil 2 Remake on PS5. I don't know, confirm or deny, but goddamn, I hate the liquors in Resident Evil 2. They can go straight to hell. Literally every zombie encounter in Resident Evil 2 Remake is tense. It's not like in Resident Evil 4, where, you know, sometimes you laugh at the zombies in Resident Evil 4, you're like, oh, you're cute, bam, you blow its freaking brains out. In Resident Evil 2, ammo is scarce, and the zombies are strong as hell, man. Zombies are not like the ones in Resident Evil 4, where, you know, a good shotgun blast right to the cranium, that bitch is down. Sometimes these zombies just don't stay down. Like, oh my god. So they go down, you can come back to that hallway, and it gets back up again. You put her down again, you come back, and you come back down the hallway. It gets up a 3rd time. You're like, Jesus, this fucker is relentless. The zombies, just the general zombies in Resident Evil 2 are fucking scary. And sometimes, like, I will be running down a hallway, I have no ammo, and I turn the corner, and I see one down there, and I'm just like, oh god, how am I I'm gonna have to deal with this, like, oh no. And that's just something I never had to deal with in Resident Evil 4, so Resident Evil 2, fucking goddamn regular zombies are terrifying, especially when they're fucking out of nowhere, they just, like, pound on the window on the outside and then go, Bleh! And I'm like, go to fucking hell. There's one area in particular right near a safe room near the stairs, and there's one zombie that was just there for like the whole game. I had it boarded up or whatever, so he couldn't get in, but he would still slam on it every time, and 80% of the time it would give me a little, ooh, goodness gracious. So that's consistently happening all the time. And of course, Mr. X, man. I mean, Mr. X, twice this guy has made me quit Resident Evil 2. First time I was introduced to Mr. X, when he comes from behind the fiery helicopter, and he's just I was just petrified, absolutely petrified. I ran to the closest safe room, because that's the only place you're safe. He will not come into the safe rooms, thank God. But that dude, I couldn't play Resident Evil for a week. It took me a week to build up the courage to go back and fucking face this guy. And he's terrifying at first. Absolutely terrifying. He is so fucking scary. Those fucking huge footsteps, his little power walk that he does. And if you fucking make the mistake of shooting his hat off, he gets even angrier, and he's power walking even faster now. And it's like, oh, geez, I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry. But man, Mr. X is just so cool. I love that. Like, I hate it and love it, because that's like my least favorite thing, is getting chased and hunted by something. But that's because it's so damn effective. It is so damn effective. Like, that absolutely terrifies me, and that's what this guy's job is. To hunt your ass down. He will always be coming after you. If you're running around, like, you can only hide for him for so long. He will eventually catch up to you. And fuck, man, there are some, like, storyline moments, like scripted scares with this guy, and even when I see them coming, still gets me. Like, there is a moment where this fucker comes through a wall, and holy shit, dude, like, that is gonna be one of the all-time scares for me of all time. Absolutely terrified of that guy. And he even got me the second time when I played through this game the second time, and I felt like, oh, I know Mr. X. He's not that bad. Like, you just got to keep moving. And the scene came again. He comes from behind that fucking helicopter. And this time, I put the controller down for 2 weeks. Now, a little bit because Resident Evil 4 Remake came into my life and I started playing that a lot, but yeah, man, that dude still gets to me. Mr. X with his emotionless face, he's huge, he's strong, and yeah, man, he's an absolutely great villain. I'm terrified of Mr. X. He scares the shit out of me. And a little cherry on top, the zombie dogs, especially the ones in the parking garage. That parking garage in Resident Evil 2, I dread that part. I'm always low on ammo, and those fucking dogs are in there. And I hate the dogs. I hate dogs as enemies in any video game because they're jumping around. They're dogs. I gotta shoot dogs. I hate that. And yeah, I hate them in Resident Evil 2. I'll give them a special shout out at the Resident Evil 4. They are nowhere near as bad. They're almost kind of cute. They're like shaggy and kind of fluffy. They're nowhere near as bad as the Resident Evil 2 dogs that are like the hound dogs, the kind of Doberman looking things, the classic, the iconic zombie dogs, and I fucking hate them. They're terrifying. Oh my goodness. Okay, I was like, I thought I already talked about Resident Evil 4. We didn't. Okay, so yeah, Resident Evil 2, scary video game. Definitely one of the scariest, if not the scariest video game I've ever played. I don't know quite yet, but it's up there, man. Resident Evil 2 scares the shit out of me. And then there's Resident Evil 4, not without its scares. Now, don't think that Resident Evil 4 isn't scary. It's just a little bit different in the way that it scares you. So, out of the gate, you got the village section, and the opening of Resident Evil 4, I'm a Resident Evil 4 guy, OG. I played through the original like 7 times, loved it. I know everything about it. And within about 5 minutes of playing Resident Evil 4, all my confidence and knowledge that I thought I knew of the original game was gone. They throw some different turns at you right at the beginning to make you maybe throw you off your game. And then you get to the village section, you get absolutely bombarded by enemies, it's scary, they throw the chainsaw guy at you, you're like, oh god, oh geez, where's the shotgun? I gotta get the shotgun. So that part is very tense, especially if you're new to Resident Evil. I remember that part absolutely terrifying me, because, back then, that was not normal to have, like, that big of a moment at you right at the beginning, that many enemies, and just kind of throwing you into the fire. Very not normal for the time back in 2005 when it came out. Not so big of a deal now, but it's still a very tense moment. There's a lot of enemies coming at you, and yeah, it's scary. Oh, dude. Oh, geez. I don't know the name of this zombie, but the blind zombies with the large claws in the castle in Resident Evil 2, those dudes always scare me. And they still scare me in the remake. Again, I still think Resident Evil 4, just everything about that game was a little bit more scary to me. Maybe because that was the first one that I played, and I have the knowledge now going into 4, so I kind of know what's coming. But those dudes still scare the hell out of me. That just, when they run at you, man, it's terrifying. Something that big and muscular and terrifying looking, running at you at full speed, going, ugh, and just going nuts. Yeah, it makes my butthole tight, and I don't like him. So that dude can go to hell. He's pretty fucking scary. The Regenerator. So we'll talk about the Regenerator. If you watched or listened to my 13 scariest enemies of all time, the Regenerator is on that list, no doubt. And I will admit, I was a little bit disappointed with the Resident Evil 4 Regenerator. I had very high hopes for this guy, and he was scary. Don't get me wrong, it was scary, especially the way that they built up the scene getting to it. It was very different from how they did it in the original game. But I feel like the new design of the Regenerator is almost kind of, I wouldn't say cute, but it's just more, it's easier to look at. He's like the smile on its face, his big kind of teethy smile, it's not as scary looking to me. I almost find it kind of goofy looking, and he's kind of plump, kind of jiggly. Like he's got some hips to him. He's got a little muffin top going there. With nothing wrong with that, but he's kind of easier to look at. The OG Regenerator in Resident Evil 4, the way that it would like shake around, and even the sound of it, just like that. It doesn't sound like that in the new one. It sounds scary, but it's just not the same. The scene, like the way that they set you up, where like when I got to that scene, you kind of get a little image of it, and I turned around. I turned the game off for the night. I'm like, nope, I'm not going to do this before bed, so I saved that for the morning. And yeah, I will admit that just seeing it, and it kind of just fucking leaves, you're like, oh shit, okay, this is going to be way different than how they introduced the Regenerator in Resident Evil 4, the original. And then the Iron Maiden shows up. The Iron Maiden is scary as well, but just wasn't as scary and effective as it was the first time I saw these guys. They're scary, don't get me wrong, but yeah, wasn't as scary. And the other part that used to bring me a lot of dread in the original Resident Evil is when, was it Salazar, the little dude, he sends out his right hand after you. And oh man, the way that they did that scene in the original, where you just kind of, you're in its view, like it's first person view, and it's flying through the tunnels, and it hits the door that you just went through, and you hear the sound behind you, you're like, oh fuck, and you know that it's hunting you. And I felt like they did a pretty damn good job with it in the remake as well. The design of that creature is very cool, very scary looking. And I will admit, I've never fought that creature properly before. I've always cheesed it in the original game. I would always buy the rocket launcher, and you can freeze it, shoot it with the rocket launcher, and you can kill it in one shot. I fought it the normal way, the way you're supposed to fight it, I guess, in the remake, and it was pretty tense, man. Like, you're running through the tunnels, and it's fucking striking at you through the ceilings and shit. I was like, oh, this is pretty freaky, I would say. But that's kind of all the big scares that I got out of Resident Evil 4. So, with that being said, the best scares goes to Resident Evil 2, and kind of a landslide victory right there. Resident Evil 2 is, like I said, is one of the scariest games I've ever played. It's extremely tense. Like, every hallway, you're tense. You're like, what's going to pop out at me? At times, it scares brilliantly. I love it. I love the way that Resident Evil 2 scares me, in like a love-hate way. Like, I get angry when it scares me, but it's because it did it so damn good. So, yeah, I gotta give all the flowers to Resident Evil 2 for its scares. It's an extremely scary video game, but don't get me wrong, Resident Evil 2, it has its moments. It absolutely does. There's some dark, like, tunnels you gotta go through that are pretty unsettling. There's some really kind of dark areas and hallways you go through that, yeah, it brings the fear, like, with that atmosphere and everything. It's just in general, it's just not as scary of a game because it gives you so much more ammo. It gives you so many more enemies to kill, so it kind of what's the word I'm looking for right there? Desensitizes you a little bit to the enemies that you're dealing with. In Resident Evil 4, you're just not dealing with the abundance of enemies in Resident Evil 2. Like I said, you probably have killed as many zombies in the first section of Resident Evil 4 than you will in the entire Resident Evil 2 game. There's just not that many enemies, and they're a lot stronger, and yeah, they put a lot more emphasis on just how terrifying and strong the zombies are. In Resident Evil 4, they're a little bit, they're almost like meat bags. They're just kind of really fucking fun to shoot. Super fun to shoot. Love shooting them, would shoot them all day. So, there you go, everybody. So if you can do the math, Resident Evil 2 is the best Resident Evil 2 video game. So I can kind of agree with that overall. Honestly, when I first started this, I had Resident Evil 4 winning, like, no problem. And that's because, in my opinion, Resident Evil 4 is the easier one to play. I would pick Resident Evil 4 over Resident Evil 2 to play any day. But in terms of what is the best Resident Evil game, it's Resident Evil 2. The game's terrifying. I think they nailed the survival horror the best in this game. I think the survival horror is at a perfect balance in this game. Now, I will admit, I have not played the first Resident Evil game. I've never played it. I've experienced it. I've watched someone play it, but I haven't done it myself, and I need to do that. But in terms of your remakes right now, I have played Resident Evil 3 Remake. I just didn't bother putting it in contention because I just don't think it's up to the level. Great game, but these are excellent, amazing video games. I would give both of these a 9, borderline 9.5s out of 10. There's a little bit of stuff wrong with each of them, but they're incredibly fun. Like I said, I would pick, if someone had a gun to my head and they said, you gotta pick one to play right now and you can only pick one, I'm picking Resident Evil 4. It's just more fun. It it's easier for me to play. It's not as stressful as Resident Evil 2 is, but if I'm looking for a scare, if I'm looking for a survival horror game, I don't know if you can get much better than Resident Evil 2 Remake. The game is damn near a masterpiece in terms of survival horror. It's probably the best survivor horror game I've ever played, but Resident Evil 2 is just more fun to play in general. But your winner of the verses for today is Resident Evil 2 Remake. Come at me. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Do you care? Which one would you pick? Which one do you think is the winner? Are my categories proper? You know, I wanted to throw in story, but I'm just not a story gamer. Like, I appreciate a good story when it's there, but that's not why I'm playing video games. I play video games to have the gameplay and the fun. The story is just like an extra bonus. If there's a great story, great. If there isn't, oh well, that's fine. As long as the gameplay is there, I'm happy. But these two remakes, arguably the best remakes ever made. They're both amazing games. You can't go wrong with either. We win as gamers. That's how it goes down. We win. These remakes exist. They nailed them. And yeah, so let me know, which one would you prefer to play? Which one do you think should win this versus as the best Resident Evil game? Not necessarily the best video game, but the best survival horror Resident Evil video game. So there you go, everybody. The first versus of the year. I know I promised Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. That will be next week. I just happened to finish off the Resident Evils. It's as fresh in my mind as it's going to be, so I wanted to do this episode now instead of waiting a week for my thoughts to get a little bit more fuzzy. So fuck it, we knocked it out now. Love doing verses. Hit me up with some suggestions for future verses. Just take into consideration that they take a lot more time and effort to put out a versus episode. I generally would have to play 2 video games or know 2 video games very, very well to produce a proper versus episode. So hit me up with some suggestions. I have a good list of future versus episodes that I'd like to do. Whenever I'm in doubt, I will do a versus with the years. We put up 2 years of gaming against each other. Now that 2023 is done, I can officially do a 2023 versus blank year. I just got to figure out what year would be a good one to put up against the powerhouse of 2023. I think I've done 3 other years versus, so you can go back and check those out. Done other versus, Guitar Hero versus Rock Band. One that I'm eyeing up and would like to do fairly soon is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater versus Skate. I think that would be a lot of fun. That could be cool. But yeah, hit me up with suggestions. I would love to hear them. And not just versus episodes, any other episodes, like old retro games that you love, hit me up. Maybe I haven't done it yet, and I plan on doing it. And maybe your suggestion will encourage me to do it faster. So send them on in. There's a Twitter page you can go check out and follow along over there. I put up announcements and stuff like that when I decide what episodes are going to be up, or if there's going to be a schedule change or anything like that. Twitter is the place to get that sort of information. And I also upload all of these to the Gamer GX Videos YouTube channel. You can watch all of these, and that is a great place to drop a comment. Let me know what you think of the podcast. If you have any questions, comments, concerns about the podcast, excellent place to drop a comment right over there. I would love to carve out a little time in the podcast for you guys, the listener, the viewer, answer your questions, concerns, anything like that. I would love that. So drop comments, send in an email. There's an email address down there as well. So there you go, everybody. Thank you so very much for listening/watching. Hope you enjoyed the verses. I really enjoy doing the verses, and probably the funnest versus I have ever done. So as of yet, playing Resident Evil 2 and 4 has been an absolute blast. I mean, what a fucking way to kick off the year for me with a couple of Resident Evil remakes. They are awesome. And oh buddy, I cannot wait to come back and talk about some more video games on the GX Plus Cast.